What's up, everybody? So, I made a video in a while. Been a little more politically active. Been spending some time with some civil rights activists, people who are getting wins. But something kept coming up, and it keeps coming up a lot. I was actually asked at one event. It was a town hall. They asked me if we could avoid war, based on my perceptions, some things I had said while I was speaking there. And I wanted to kind of wrap this up in the structure of the United States. So, the United States is basically a shell corporation, okay? The United States of America, the federal government, is a shell corporation. That shell corporation is facilitated by an existence of the uniting of 50 states plus the U.S. territories. So those U.S. territories recognize the federal government, therefore the federal government exists. That's pretty much how it works. So the states are actually superior to the federal government. In other words, the states don't serve the federal government, nor should the U.S. flag, the United States flag, be above the state flags of the independent states, because the states are sovereign and the federal government has no power over them. So the states maintain their sovereignty in two ways, militarily. The states have the power to mobilize the militia. And if you read the definition, especially in the state of Florida, it basically says any able-bodied person who can fight, once mobilized, now becomes the Florida militia, plus the National Guard. So that's the way the law of the state of Florida reads. What that means is, should the federal government deploy federal troops in Florida, it would be the duty, and it actually says duty, of any able-bodied person to defend the state, because the state is more powerful than the federal government. Okay, so that's how the law reads. And I actually read through these laws to try and realize, and it basically coincided with the Federalist Papers. And I'm like, okay, so really it is state sovereignty. Now this is where it gets interesting. We have U.S. passports, but right now it appears the federal government is moving its way to disintegration through economic destruction. So, and this is where the question came from. Should the federal government commit bankruptcy because of its shell ability and its ability to, go through, liquidate its debts or shed its skin? It would disintegrate, or it would go unfunded, and it would actually enter a bankruptcy process. So the states would become independently sovereign, and in the Federalist Papers, it talks about the states have the ability to coin silver and gold money, and they could use that for commerce. So what would probably happen is the states would get together and go, all right, we're going to make this is the coinage we're going to make. What I would do, or something to the effect of it, is I would collect the gold and the silver from the citizens. I would issue bonds to them based on the valuation of gold and silver. And then they would get issued bonds, and then you would take those bonds, keep them. The gold and silver would then be stamped or coined according to the Federalist Papers. And then I would, or like this would be the recommendation, not that I would do it. I'm probably not going to be here when it happens anyways. But, so then you would use that coinage for interstate commerce. All right. The federal government would finish its bankruptcy process. It would go through and liquidate all of its debts, all of its entitlements, all that be gone. Money's gone anyways. They've already spent it all. They just spend. They can't stop spending. They're spending on everything. So it's just a complete liquidation of assets is what they're doing. And then coming out of bankruptcy, the federal government would then be reassembled anew, and you would go through this process where the federal government would then go to the states. The states would say, okay, how many bonds do you have? Well, I have this many. Or how many bonds do you have out? They'd have this many bonds out. How much actual gold and silver coinage do you have in your possession? And they would say, oh, we have this much gold and silver coinage right now, and we have this many bonds out. They'd say, okay, we're going to remake a federal dollar. We're going to collect the bonds that have been issued. We're going to cycle out all the gold and silver, and we're going to issue a currency note called a dollar. And then that currency note would be backed by the gold and silver, and the people that had the bonds would have those bonds paid to them, in which case we would then have a federal dollar again. So this whole thing about it's going to collapse and everything's bad, here's the reality. Even in the midst of chaos, human beings are pre-programmed to have some semblance of hierarchy of structure for social and civil interaction. That's why there's always, quote unquote, a government. The existence of the government is human beings' desire to have liberty and freedom and all these things. So if I had to give any recommendations of how to prepare, I would just follow the law. If it were to go bad and the federal government turned on its citizens, and if you think I'm crazy or if you think I'm exaggerating, I would probably read your Federalist Papers, because I don't know how many times in the Federalist Papers John Adams, James Madison, John Jay specifically talked about the federal government turning on its people. So they must be crazy too. Okay, because these are their words. This is this was their ideas. They went through a whole conspiracy theory about all the ways that government could go bad, and that's what the Federalist Papers are. So I would have two things that are really important. Number one, if the federal government doesn't exist, the state governments would then assume control, which they should actually be in control now, but they're not, because I don't think people at state level know that they're superior to the federal. So I would make sure I have my birth certificate, an actual couple copies of the birth certificate, because it solidifies your territorial and state status as a citizen within the state that you were born. It's a born state, so your birth certificate's really important. So I definitely have a copy of the birth certificate to qualify you. And then I would have, I would do what it says. If it says that the whole thing goes down and, the militia has to be mobilized with the Air National Guard in conjunction, it says any able-bodied person, well, I would make myself an able-bodied person. But the fact is, there will not be a mobilization against the federal government. There will not be we're going to take over the government. That's not going to happen. But you are allowed to defend yourself in this country, and our laws are built around the premise of self-defense. So if you were to be attacked, you not only have the right, but you would have a citizen responsibility and citizen duty to defend should it go down, which I don't think these people are cowards. I don't foresee that happening. So, but listen, you guys have a good day. God bless you. I just wanted to share my thoughts. Hope somebody finds it interesting.